Well, I haven't been on YouTube for, I don't know, 7 months or so. So, I just wanted to say years ago when this all got going, and I was, on YouTube in 2007 when it first got started, things started to change quite rapidly about 5 years ago. And so, um, when they came out with this branding thing, branding yourself on YouTube, right, in order to monetize your videos. I was one of very few people who never took part in this period. I never monetized my videos. I never asked for any money. I kept my channel, and um, I got a few strikes on it, but they eventually went away. And now it seems that people need to really realize that YouTube, in other words, Google, which is owned by Alphabet um, Corporation, Facebook. I've never been on Facebook, uh, and Amazon is essentially a huge data collection machine. This is what was being discussed way back after 9/11, I might add, in terms of the total surveillance project, which the US government and private industry said, that never happened. It went away. We quit doing that. Well, I mean, any reasonable person at this point can ascertain that this is not the truth. And so I chose not to brand myself on YouTube on my introductory video to my channel. But I tell you what, I'm going to do it now. And this might quite possibly be the last video I will ever do. The reason being is it never made any sense to me to give all my data away to some corporation, to some private entity that is flying high on the stock market, which essentially these corporations, Google, Facebook, Amazon, have a huge global monopoly of data collection. And if you don't think that private industry and these huge conglomerates are not collaborating with government, essentially to bring about something completely against our own interests, then I guess you've been buying the bullshit. I've never bought it. I kind of played along with it. You kind of have to, if you're in the professional world, you have to have your smartphone and so on for the time being. You don't have to do any important transactions on those smartphones, by the way. You don't have to do that. But especially the younger generation, and this is what I'm um, very concerned about, is it's basically an accepted practice. It's just become normalized that you're glued to your phone, you're glued to your computer 24/7, when studies have now shown that it is actually dumbing people down. It is dumbing down their cognitive abilities. And I questioned that from the very beginning. And so I have to say, good riddance to Google, Amazon aficionados, Facebook people. It is all the manipulation taking place at this point in history is so immense that I basically have no longer any interest in even partaking in it. I mean, why should I? And unfortunately, younger people won't have that um, ability to simply opt out because it's necessary for their jobs. It is a requirement. You have to have a social profile on social media and all this stuff. And unfortunately, um, it is the sort of herd mentality, which is a mixture of 1984, Orwell's 1984, and the vision of Aldous Huxley, where everybody basically just goes along for the sake of convenience and it's all great. And this is where we have arrived at this point. And I really don't know what else to say. There are still a few channels on YouTube that I tune into. Very eclectic channels. They don't monetize their stuff either, or at least they've quit doing it. And I don't know if there will be any other outlets who will not follow that corporate/government line to its logical conclusion, which will be a total surveillance society. This is where we're at this point. And any kind of new ideas, any new perspectives are completely outside of that spectrum at this stage in history, at least in the Western world. So, you'll have to excuse me. I'm not going to be doing any personal updates. I'm not going to be talking about politics in the United States. It is a complete farce at this point. I don't know what the solution to all of this is. This is a completely new paradigm, a kind of technological takeover of our society, a society basically driven by algorithms, accountable to no one, and the power definitely does not lie with the people, the electorate, or anybody else. In my opinion, personal opinion, that is, it's not Donald Trump that's the big threat here. The biggest threat to humanity at this point, I believe, is the tech industry in Silicon Valley and all associated industries, including the military-industrial complex, which is all part of this. You have to remember that both Amazon and Google and Alphabet all have contracts with the major intelligence agencies in the United States. So it's a mishmash. At this point, personally, I don't know where this is going to go, whether this is going to somehow reverse because of completely unforeseen events, which the tech industries and basically the technological and political elites cannot foresee or plan for. Nobody really knows, so there's no prediction to be made. What I am sure of is that the specter of global climate change, the warming of the planet, is not a farce. It's a real thing. It is happening. And both the military-industrial complex as well as data collection agencies and all of this, it's all, they all know about this. It's just a question of how humanity wants to deal with this problem. And that problem is not going to be solved anytime soon. It is more likely to devolve into complete chaos once it gets bad enough. And I do support more localized economies, localization instead of globalization. You know, I've never been for globalization to start with. Now it's globalization is seen as something it can be critiqued one way or the other. But you know, Davos, the people at Davos, the elites, they insist on this subject, and they want to just keep going on status quo. They just want to keep going, and unfortunately, you know, the natural world is not going to cooperate with their plans, and so there will be chaos, there will be mayhem. There's a lot of things coming that especially Americans are just completely ignorant of, and the our reliance on technology is so complete at this point that any interruption in our global supply cycles and global supply chains would be so detrimental to any uh, advanced technological society that possibly 50% of that population living there would be completely um, what you would call up Schitt's Creek. They would not know what to do. And without people around who still do know um, how to plant, how to actually do agriculture, which in itself might be a problem, you know, philosophically speaking. But let's just say if without a generation still living, and they will soon die off like me, and I don't know anything about agriculture. I mean, I'm as ignorant as anybody else out there. But you can't live without food. You can't live without uh, something to eat, and it's going to be a huge problem for developed societies. And because of this climate change, it is mostly these regions around the globe that actually still know how to do it, which are going to be completely devastated by this thing. So, you know, I'm not ideologically predispositioned anymore. I I've come to realize that the human species is not invulnerable. We have huge problems as a species to start with. We're not we're not invincible. Um, all of us have egos. There are very few people who don't have egos. The elites rise to the top as they generally do in all societies. That sometimes they make the right decisions, sometimes they make totally wrong decisions, and it's always a problem uh, to be solved, and then comes the solving of the problem, which creates the next problem, and so on. So my channel is not about money. I I don't know what to say about money. I can, as long as I can live a reasonably uh, secure life without any kind of luxuries. I can live without TV. I can live without the internet. Um, I don't think things will be too bad. But for a lot of people, the younger generation especially, if the internet ever goes down, if for any length of time, or even the specter of the connectedness, the electronic connectedness, which entails every technological sector, manufacturing sector, everything that is engulfed in this, it would basically be mayhem if that ever fails for any length of time. I would say probably 4 weeks would be tops. After that, there will be chaos. I'm not looking forward to that chaos, uh, But I think mentally, you almost have to be prepared for it, because this is not something that conspiracy theorists imagine. It is a real possibility. So, well, with that in mind, as usual, a non-controversial video for YouTube and Google. Uh, at this point, I don't care much if they take it on my channel. It's irrelevant, basically. Well, good night to the people who've been listening to my videos for I don't know, 10 years or something. Uh, Many people have just, gone completely away. I don't do makeup videos. I don't do cat videos. I don't do none of that shit. So, yeah, but that's, popularity contests are really popular on YouTube and Google and in the news and what's what's called the news these days. And it's probably always been this way. So don't get too frazzled. Don't get too freaked out about all this stuff. It just means um, we're living through a historic shift in in within the human species, so to speak, and it's coming about a bit faster than in the past few generations. But there are no guarantees for anything.